Welcome back. Today we're testing the new Motiv Primal shock. If you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button.
If you like what we do, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and check us out on Patreon.
Alright, first impressions. This may be controversial, but the Primal shock may bench my Venom shock. Alright, let me drop this bomb. Basically, the Primal shock is the tweeners and strokers, what the Venom shock is the high rev bowlers. Did that hurt enough? So let me explain. First, let's evaluate the new Primal shock on its merits. It has the identical thermal cover from the Venom shock with the identical finish. It has the Impulse V2 core from the Primal balls. I've always liked the Impulse core. I've said it a million times, and I'll say it again. Cover, ball, and lane surface dictate 70% of the ball reaction. So this leaves the Primal only, 30% window to differentiate itself from the Venom shock. Additionally, you can argue that two cores maybe only 30 to 50% different, leaving maybe something like 10% ball reaction to play with. Don't ask me how I come up with these ballpark numbers, but I do play with data for a living. So anyway, I couldn't have been the only one really wondering what the real difference was going to be between these two balls. And my final question would be, would I need both balls in the bag? What I can say is what I hinted at. I felt that Primal Shock has one leg up on the Venom for me. Are you surprised? I mean, the crux of it, of course, comes down to the core and what it does. The Impulse core makes the Primal a touch more rolly than the Gear core, a bit earlier and more flare, which makes it less reliant on the cover to make a move, if that makes sense. So what I found for mid and lower rev bowlers was that sometimes the shock was great and sometimes it hit soft. It hit soft for me whenever the cover shined up and just wouldn't drive as well. Surface was my friend with the shock. And aside from that, little bit, I do enjoy the shock a ton, but with the Primal, it just feels like that 5 to 10% difference for me is all that I needed to say I feel a little better with the Primal in my bag. And where is that? In the mid-control category. The thing is still, this cover lane shines hella fast, and either ball, I find they lose some of that blend when it lane shines, which makes it slightly tricky. Almost like it's a bit too much at times for mid-control, but also it weakened with lane shine to the point that I didn't trust it as much, at least for the Venom. I'm hoping that the Primal with the bigger core will dispel that issue for me. Now, before you ask, they're probably more different on Sport Shot as opposed to the House Shot because that blends a lot. Well, I can tell you for a fact, no. What we saw in the House Shot was the same we saw in the Sport Shot. In fact, we gave up on the House Shot partway through our testing because we really wanted there to be no question of the ball motion capabilities we saw. Plus, the House Shot can sometimes be iffy. This particular test here is on the 41-foot Team USA trials pattern. Okay, I'm going to cover Brian next. What I'm doing here is going in order of how good the ball looked for each bowler. The Primal Shock looked excellent for him. You could see how much pop it had down lane. Again, what I mentioned here, this is a 41-foot Team USA pattern, so it's a tough pattern, but you really had a great look. You can go right up the second arrow with a small belly, and the ball had just enough length and then turned over harder than he usually sees to the pocket. Yeah, the sport patterns can help create some back end, but you will see when when we compare it to the Forge how different the balls look. So it kind of takes that factor out of play per se. I mean, he went as far as a third arrow and had a look. He could settle back down to to the right between second and third arrow. Just I don't know. I mean, it's a really pretty nice and easy to the pocket with good carry. It really was a gorgeous reaction. With that much motion, you would think it could be a little over, but in reality, it was really kind of just right, like Goldilocks length with the Goldilocks amount of stored energy to carry quite well and give him room. And this is what a benchmark ball should do for you. Now, when comparing to the Venom Shock, again, you'll watch the ball go down the lane and wonder if they're really a different ball. The subtle difference is that the Shock was just a smidge later and snappier. I mean, just a smidge. But so anyway, from more direct near the second arrow, it looked really close to the Primal. I mean, they both carried fine, so you probably couldn't tell the difference. However, The telltale of what I referred to earlier regarding the primal benefiting lower rev bowlers is seen immediately when Brian migrates to the third arrow with the Venom shock. There, the core just hits a touch softer, leaving a flat corner. So while either shock got into the pocket like benchmark balls, the Primal was the one that actually carried from both closed and open angles for him. As I mentioned earlier, have a look at the significant difference here in shape and strength of the Forge, which is a strong control ball in his arsenal. Last but not least is Tyler. Tossing the Primal shock really just wasn't as easy for him as it was for Brian and I. The overall shape looked fine, but he did see a bit more over-under than we did. Really, what I want to hone in on is the shape difference between the Primal shock and the Venom shock for Tyler. I can tell you now that he liked the Venom shock more, for sure. He had about the same shape with the same lane control, but a little later and more punch. So that meant he carried better, even though the shape difference is pretty nuanced. The issue here goes back to the core, in my opinion. If you've watched EJ Tackett, he uses the Venom shock a ridiculous amount. It's a great ball for him. He can really rev it up, and it kind of generates a ton of torque because of his rev rate. The core has that lower differential, so it offers a control motion that he just gets to explode because of his hand. So if you pay close attention to EJ's motion, you'll see that not all balls go through the pins the way you would like, but they do carry quite often because he throws pins all around. So ultimately, it's a control motion for him, a benchmark. And the Venom shock looks that way for Tyler as well. Once he has the bigger core of the Primal in this cover, all of a sudden that slightly earlier and rounder shape just doesn't work as well for him. It's a small nuance that can probably be manipulated a bit with layouts. I don't want to say Primal was just a bad ball for him. I think he can get what he's looking for with change in layout. Now for additional context, here's the Carbide tank, which you would think might have too much cover surface, but works like a charm for Tyler, as does the Jackal ambush. With both of these balls, what both of these balls do is control the fronts of this tough pattern and have a smooth, rounded earlier shape than both the Primal and the Venom. Alright, let me just round this out with final thoughts. The question for any of us is what to do between the Primal and Venom shocks. Firstly, both balls are mid-control balls in the arsenal, in my opinion. Frankly, this is one where I'd be totally confused by Motiv's placement in the ball chart if I didn't actually test it. Both might make more sense in isolation, but if anything, the Primal's placed correctly and the shock is not. They're way closer than they appear in the chart, and therein lies the rub. As of today, as a tweener, I think the Primal would sit in my mid-control spot over the Venom. Same for Brian, while it's actually the opposite would be true for Tyler.